How did a boy from a poor family, with almost nothing in his pocket, become the richest man in American history? This is the story of John D. Rockefeller, the man who built an empire from oil and created a legacy that continues to shape our world today. His journey is not just about money, but also about discipline, vision, and the belief that small steps can lead to unimaginable success. John Davison Rockefeller was born on July 8, 1839, in Richford, New York. His family was far from rich. In fact, his father, William Rockefeller, was known as a trickster and a traveling salesman who often cheated people. His mother, Eliza, on the other hand, was deeply religious, strict, and believed in the importance of hard work, honesty, and saving money. From his mother, young John learned discipline. From his father, he observed the rough and sometimes dishonest ways of business. These two very different influences shaped him into a man who was both sharp in business and careful in money matters. When John was a teenager, his family moved to Cleveland, Ohio. There, at the age of only 16, he got his first job as an assistant bookkeeper. He earned just 50 cents a day. But John did not see this as a small job. For him, every number in the books, every detail of accounting, was a lesson. He loved numbers, and he quickly became skilled at keeping track of profits and costs. Even at this young age, Rockefeller developed habits that stayed with him for life. He kept a personal ledger, where he wrote down every penny he spent and every penny he earned. He believed that controlling money was the first step to building wealth. He once said, "Do not many of us, who fail to achieve big things, fail because we lack discipline and self-control?" By the time he was in his late teens, John was already thinking big. While others his age were busy enjoying life, he was saving money and dreaming of running his own business. He often said that his ambition was to earn $100,000 and live to be 100 years old. At that time, both goals sounded impossible, but Rockefeller would achieve both. The world around him was also changing. America was entering a new age of industries, railroads, and factories. New opportunities were everywhere for those who had vision and courage. Rockefeller was ready to take his chance. And soon he would find the industry that would make him not only rich, but also one of the most powerful men in history: oil. In the 1850s and 1860s, America was changing fast. The discovery of oil in Pennsylvania created a new industry that everyone wanted to enter. Most people thought the real money was in drilling wells. But drilling was risky. One day you could find oil, the next day you could lose everything. Rockefeller was different. He was not a gambler. He was a planner. Instead of chasing oil in the ground, he focused on oil refining, the process of turning crude oil into kerosene, which was used for lamps. This was safer, more stable, and more profitable. In 1859, at just 20 years old, Rockefeller started his first company with a partner. He invested his savings carefully and built a small oil refinery in Cleveland. He chose Cleveland because it was close to railroads and shipping routes, making it easy to transport oil. His partner was Samuel Andrews, a skilled chemist who knew how to refine oil. Rockefeller managed the money. Andrews managed the refining. And together they started growing fast. But Rockefeller's mind was always focused on one thing: efficiency. He hated waste. He cut costs wherever possible, negotiated the best deals with railroads, and reinvested profits back into the business. While other businessmen spent their profits on luxury, Rockefeller saved and expanded. Slowly but surely, he began buying out his competitors. In 1870, John D. Rockefeller founded the Standard Oil Company. It was not just another business. It was an empire in the making. Rockefeller believed that the oil industry was too chaotic, with too many small companies, unstable prices, and poor quality products. His goal was to bring order, stability, and control. To achieve this, he used aggressive but smart strategies. He made secret deals with railroads to get cheaper shipping rates. He bought out struggling competitors, sometimes offering them fair deals, and sometimes forcing them to sell. When he could not buy a company, he simply outcompete them by lowering prices until they gave up. Rockefeller was ruthless, but also highly effective. Within just a decade, Standard Oil became the most powerful company in America. By the 1880s, it controlled more than 90% of the U.S. oil refining industry. For the average American, kerosene lamps became affordable and reliable thanks to Rockefeller's efficiency. But for his competitors, he was a nightmare. They called him a monopolist, a man who destroyed competition. Newspapers accused him of being too powerful, almost like a king. Rockefeller did not mind the criticism. He believed that what he was doing was good for the economy, good for the people, and good for progress. He once said, "Competition is a sin." For him, unity and control were better than chaos. By his 40s, Rockefeller was already one of the richest men in America. But he was just getting started. His empire was growing larger every year. And soon his name would become a symbol of both incredible success and controversial power. By the late 1800s, John D. Rockefeller was no longer just a businessman. He was a symbol of power. His company, Standard Oil, had become so big that it controlled almost every part of the oil industry in America. From refining to transportation, from distribution to sales, Rockefeller's hand was everywhere. At the height of his power, Standard Oil controlled nearly 90% of the oil refining in the United States. This level of dominance had never been seen before in American history. It made Rockefeller the richest man in the country and eventually the richest man in the world. But his rise was not without controversy. Critics accused him of using unfair methods. Newspapers wrote stories about his secret railroad deals, his takeovers of small businesses, and his aggressive pricing. Some even called him the most hated man in America. Yet, despite all the hate, Rockefeller stayed calm. He believed he was bringing efficiency to the oil market. Before him, oil was expensive and unstable. After him, kerosene became cheap, safe, and available in every household. Millions of families could now light their homes at night. Rockefeller once said, "The day of combination is here to stay. Individualism has gone, never to return." In his mind, big business was the future of America. As Standard Oil grew, so did Rockefeller's personal fortune. He became America's first billionaire, a title that shocked the world. To understand his wealth, historians calculated that if adjusted for inflation, Rockefeller would be worth over $400 billion today. That makes him richer than Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or any modern billionaire. But with great wealth came great pressure. The U.S. government began to see Standard Oil as a dangerous monopoly. Politicians and the public demanded action. In 1911, after years of legal battles, the Supreme Court ordered Standard Oil to be broken up into 34 smaller companies. For most men, this would have been the end of their empire. But for Rockefeller, it was the opposite. Ironically, the breakup made him even richer. The smaller companies, like Exxon, Mobil, and Chevron, became giants on their own. Rockefeller owned shares in all of them, and their combined value skyrocketed. Despite his fortune, Rockefeller lived a surprisingly simple life. He avoided fancy clothes and big parties. He was known for his strict routines, going to church, maintaining a healthy diet, and keeping detailed records of his finances. Still, the public saw him as both a hero and a villain. To some, he was a genius who built an empire from nothing. To others, he was a greedy monopolist who crushed competition. Whatever people thought of him, one thing was certain: no one could ignore the name Rockefeller. By the early 1900s, John D. Rockefeller was not just the richest man in America, he was the most powerful. But in his later years, he decided to use that power for a new purpose, giving back to society. As John D. Rockefeller grew older, his focus began to change. He had already built the largest fortune the world had ever seen. Now, he wanted to build something even greater, a legacy of giving. Rockefeller believed that money had a purpose beyond personal luxury. He once said, "I believe that every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity, an obligation, every possession, a duty. For him, wealth was not just for keeping, it was for improving society. In his later years, Rockefeller gave away more than $500 million. At that time, this was an enormous amount of money, equal to billions of dollars, today. His donations changed the future of education, science, and medicine. One of his biggest contributions was to education. In 1890, he founded the University of Chicago, which quickly became one of the top universities in the world. He also supported Spelman College, an institution dedicated to educating African American women. Through these efforts, he opened doors for thousands of students who otherwise would never have had a chance. Rockefeller also believed in science and health. He created the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, which later became Rockefeller University. This institution helped discover cures for deadly diseases like meningitis and yellow fever. He funded public health programs to fight hookworm and malaria in the southern United States. Millions of lives were saved through these efforts. In 1913, Rockefeller established the Rockefeller Foundation, an organization dedicated to solving the world's biggest problems. The foundation worked globally, funding research, supporting education, and promoting public health. Its impact continues even today, more than a century later. Despite his immense wealth, Rockefeller lived a surprisingly simple personal life. He enjoyed gardening, playing golf, and spending time with his family. He avoided extravagance and preferred quiet routines. He was known for giving dimes to children he met, a small habit that became famous. To him, it was a symbol of teaching young people the value of saving and managing money wisely. John D. Rockefeller lived to be 97 years old. He achieved his dream of living close to a century and far surpassed his youthful goal of earning $100,000. By the time he passed away in 1937, he had changed not only the oil industry, but also the way the world thought about business and philanthropy. Today, his name still carries power. The companies that were once part of Standard Oil, like ExxonMobil and Chevron, remain global giants. The institutions he funded continue to educate, heal, and innovate. Rockefeller's story is both inspiring and controversial. He was seen as ruthless in business, yet generous in giving. Some called him a monopolist. Others called him a visionary. But in the end, his life proved one thing. With discipline, vision, and determination, even a poor boy from Cleveland can shape the history of the world. John D. Rockefeller's life was full of contradictions. On one side, he was feared as a ruthless businessman who crushed his competition and built a monopoly that dominated an entire industry. On the other side, he was admired as one of the greatest philanthropists in history, a man who gave away most of his fortune to improve education, science, and public health. This dual nature is what makes Rockefeller's story so fascinating. He was not a simple hero or a simple villain. He was a complex man who showed how ambition, discipline, and vision can build empires, but also how power can bring criticism and controversy. If there was one quality that defined Rockefeller, it was discipline. From his teenage years, he kept track of every penny he spent. He lived by routines, followed strict rules, and made decisions with a long-term vision. While many businessmen were distracted by luxury or greed, Rockefeller stayed focused on growth and efficiency. His discipline turned small savings into massive investments. It allowed him to survive failures, face criticism, and still build the largest company in the world. Discipline was his foundation, and it is the first lesson we can learn from him. Rockefeller never limited his dreams. As a young man, he said his goal was to earn $100,000, an unimaginable sum at the time. But he went far beyond that. He became the richest man in modern history. He looked at oil not just as a product, but as a revolution that could change how people lived. He saw opportunity where others saw chaos. And because he thought big, he built big. In his later years, Rockefeller believed that wealth brought responsibility. He could have kept his money, for himself and his family, but he chose a different path. Through his donations, he funded universities, medical research, and global health programs. Millions of people benefited from his generosity. And his foundation continues to impact the world, even today. This shows us another important lesson. True success is not only measured by how much you earn, but also by how much you give back. John D. Rockefeller's story is a reminder that greatness often comes with challenges, criticism, and sacrifice. He was not perfect, but he was determined. He believed in saving, in working hard, and in building something larger than himself. From a poor boy in Cleveland to the richest man in the world, his life proves that no dream is too big if you have discipline, vision, and the courage to take risks. So, the next time you doubt your own potential, remember the story of John D. Rockefeller, the oil king. His journey shows us that with focus and determination, even the smallest beginnings can create the biggest legacies.